Thank you, Oireachtas. Minister, as you know, the CLAR programme was established in 2001, and at that time the areas were identified on the basis of areas that had suffered due to population decline. To my knowledge, there was only one extension of the CLAR original programme, and that was in 2006, based on the 2002 census. I've been calling, as you would see from correspondence in your department, Minister, and through parliamentary questions as well, for an extension of the programme, but perhaps you would let us know where the consultation process is in relation to a possible extension of this very important programme, particularly for small rural communities. Thank you, Oireachtas.
And thank you, Deputy Smith, for raising this matter with me. The CLAR programme provides funding for small-scale projects in designated rural areas that have experienced significant levels of depopulation over a defined period. Since the programme was relaunched in 2016, it has supported a wide range of measures. The CLAR 2022 programme was launched in February this year, and I am delighted to say that the overall amount awarded under all measures of the 2022 programme was a record €12.2 million, with 292 projects being supported. A review of CLAR areas nationally was undertaken in 2021 using the 2016 census of population data. The review examined the most recent changes in population patterns throughout the country on the basis of this 2016 data. It also examined the approach to developing the existing CLAR designations, which is based on 2002 data, and considered how changes in population since then impacted on designations. From the review, it is clear that many areas have seen population growth in the relevant period rather than decline, and indeed the most recent census data published by the Central Statistics Office point to population growth across all counties since 2016. The details of the review are being considered by my department before any decisions are made in relation to areas which are designated as eligible for CLAR. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and I hope that process of reviewing it can be expedited as much as possible. I know from speaking to my colleague Deputy Eamon O'Keefe, who was the architect of the original CLAR programme, and at that time population decline was the main measurement in regard to identifying areas, but it was always his opinion, and that of other people involved in drafting the programme, that as the programme developed and as it brought investment to areas, that other criteria should be also brought into, it should be factored into assessment for areas for consideration for inclusion. Minister, you are aware, and thankfully in our own counties we have had a population growth, particularly in County Cavan, continuously since the early 1990s, and also in Monaghan. Thankfully there has been a great growth in employment as well as in population. For far too many decades we suffered a decline in our population. Thankfully we have the reverse. But along with population growth, thankfully, there's also additional pressures on local amenities and local social infrastructure. So, Minister, you and I are aware, when we both have had representations from different communities, say where a school has developed, maybe a small rural primary school, and the population has grown, but there's an increased demand on services, and they can't avail, say, of assistance towards the development of a playground, etc. So in areas where there has been a welcome growth in population, there still should be other criteria attached to assessing inclusion in CLAR. Thank you, Oireachtas.
Thank you, and thank you, Deputy. And indeed, both of us know well the benefits of CLAR funding, you have been on to me on many occasions about different projects, and I'm just looking here. Kilnalek got 50,000 only recently for the upgrade of the playground, and St Anne's National School Parents Association got 45,000 to build a Muga area. Lavi Community Group got 50,000 for wheelchair access. Brackley Lake Geopark, that you're extremely familiar with, 50,000. And Ballymahue, another one that you'd know well, is 20 GAA, and Sheelan Park got 23,000 for an AstroTurf car park. And these are all small grants, as you know and I know, but they're very, very important to these communities, and they're simple enough to get in terms of you apply to the local authority, they assess them, and then they send them on to my department, and we work on that. in terms of Cavan Town and Clonhervey and Mine Hall and Ballyhaise are the only areas that aren't included in CLAR. And of course, sorry, I'll come back to you, Deputy.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. And of course I agree with the Minister, and we've all been supportive of groups working very hard to draw down that extra funding. And we know that when groups get some public funding, it enables them to raise funding through their own fundraising initiatives as well. And it's a really, as well as being an important financial contribution, it's a great encouragement to groups. Minister, you mentioned Clonhervey there. That's the Castleterra Ballyhaise area. That's one area where there would be a small enough population, and I had the instance in that area where they couldn't avail of assistance towards the development of a school playground. So it's one of the areas that I would like to see a different criteria being brought in the assessment of other areas that might be included in the CLAR programme in the future. So thank you, Cahill.
Thank you, and thanks, Deputy. And of course, you know, I'm happy to take on board your suggestions in terms of what other criteria we can look at for areas that aren't included. But we did, as I say, we did do the review of it, and we found that in a lot of areas the population had actually increased, which is a good thing, and it's good to see it. But I think it's also important to say that there's now other funding streams as well from my department, and you'll be very familiar with the Community Centres Investment Fund and the good support that communities are getting there, because only last week we made that announcement, and there's 33 million has been invested for the upgrade and development of 270 community centres nationwide, and I know that there was a number of those community centres that you were very, very anxious that they would be supported, and I was glad that we were in a position to do that, particularly a number that you had mentioned to me. So that's good news. So I suppose we continue to keep all of these things under review, Deputy. Thanks.